Prologue. Artal Gramont, heir to the Tea Charter of Castellane, is on a ship returning from exile after his father's death, now inheriting the family's wealth. While he finds the sea dull and anxiety-inducing, he is accompanied by a mysterious woman skilled in magic whom he fears. The woman, who remains faceless and cloaked in black, congratulates him on his impending marriage to Antonetta Alain, but warns him about his father's betrayal and the potential risk involved. She hints that Antonetta holds crucial information about someone they need to ally with. The woman also tells Artal to use any means necessary to extract this information from Antonetta, while ensuring her survival for leverage. She advises him to keep wearing a magical amulet for protection. Artal, now fully aligned with her plans, is left contemplating his role in the dangerous politics unfolding. In Chapter 1, Kel and Conor practice swordplay in the hayloft, reminiscing about their past training, while addressing Conor's new role in governance. Conor is preparing for the upcoming Dial Chamber meeting, where he plans to announce his engagement to solidify Castellane's alliances, despite opposition from some nobles. The meeting is tense, but Conor's announcement is ultimately accepted, securing a dowry and warship support from their new ally. As Conor discusses the political situation, including the continued pressure from Sarta, Kel reflects on the dangerous politics of Castellane, particularly the recent change in the Dai Charter after the Rovage family's downfall. Kel also learns about Conor's blackmail dealings and the upcoming marriage to Angelica of Kutani. Later, Kel receives an invitation to a gathering, where he is shocked by the mention of the Grey Serpent, the secret lover of a noble. The chapter ends with Kel's growing concerns about the shifting power dynamics in Castellane. In Chapter 2, Kel undergoes crawler training with Jared, learning to scale walls using only minimal hand and footholds. Kel is still anxious from the recent Dial Chamber meeting, where Conor's announcement of his marriage plan to prevent war was met with mixed reactions. Jared, Marin, and Gian join him, and they discuss various political developments, including the upcoming marriage to Angelica of Kutani and the changing dynamics in Castellane. Kel also reflects on the Grey Serpent, a mysterious figure mentioned by Artal Gramont in his last words. At the Caravel, Kel encounters Montfaucon and Raymond, a former fighter with a criminal Tully brand. Montfaucon tries to use Raymond in a staged fight for the crowd, which Kel finds concerning. The chapter ends with Kel leaving the Caravel in a hurry after a tense interaction with Montfaucon and Marin, heading toward a carriage to follow the mysterious events unfolding in Castellane. In Chapter 3, Lin reflects on her conversation with Hana and the Maharam's mixed advice regarding her claim to be the goddess returned. While wrestling with the weight of Hana's faith in her, Lin also contemplates the secret of her knowledge about the burning ships, learned from the Ragpicker King's Black Mansion. Lin visits Miriam, who is recovering from an illness, and they discuss various topics, including Antonetta's upcoming engagement and Lin's struggles with magic. Meanwhile, Kel and his team track Raymond, the ex-fighter, who was involved in the Shining Gallery slaughter. After a chaotic pursuit and a confrontation, Raymond reveals he was hired by a noblewoman named Magali to intimidate the Sarthian princess, but things escalated into murder. As Kel and Jared press for answers, Raymond's story is interrupted by an assassin who warns Kel to stop investigating or face dire consequences, leaving Kel shaken and confused by the assassin's cryptic words. In Chapter 4, Kel and his team reflect on the failed attempt to get information from Raymond, who was killed shortly after their interrogation. The group discusses the mysterious assassin who shot Raymond and the clues that connect the attack to the Shining Gallery slaughter. Kel reveals his encounter with the Dark Assassin, linking them to a series of violent events. The team speculates about the involvement of Magali, a woman connected to the Alains, and Kel decides to report to Legate Jolivet before taking further action. Lin, now a part of the group, tends to Kel's neck wound and shares insights about the Ashkar people's beliefs, including the Great Prayer. Later, Kel returns to Maravent to find a note from Jolivet and a sleeping Conor. Reflecting on his relationship with the prince, Kel decides to help him rest, ensuring his duties don't overwhelm him. In Chapter 5, Lin reluctantly tries on a revealing dress designed by Miriam meant for a noblewoman before being summoned by Oren Kandel to meet with the Maharam. Lin is ordered to attend the Shulamat immediately, despite her discomfort with her appearance. At the Shulamat, she meets the Exilarch, Amon Aran Benjuda, who is there to test her claim of being the goddess returned. Aaron seems unimpressed, stating that many have claimed the title before. After a brief exchange, Lin is dismissed and reflects on the pressures of the upcoming test. Meanwhile, Kel attends Antonetta Aline's engagement party, where he interacts with various nobles, including Artel Gremont, who is set to marry Antonetta. Gremont is dismissive and flirtatious, while Kel grows increasingly uncomfortable with the situation. The chapter ends with Kel's surprise, as he sees Jared, Marin, and Jeanne performing on stage at the party, revealing a hidden involvement in the event. In Chapter 6, Lin attends Antonetta Aline's engagement party, but becomes increasingly uncomfortable with the attention her revealing dress draws. She sneaks behind a curtain to find Antonetta, who expresses her deep unhappiness with her impending marriage to Artel Gremont, who has treated her cruelly. Despite her feelings, Antonetta feels trapped by the political and financial benefits her marriage will bring. Lin leaves to fetch wine for Antonetta, only to encounter Cyprian Cabrol, who shares his dissatisfaction with his position on the hill. Lin then accidentally spills wine on Prince Conor, who unexpectedly asks her to dance. They share a tense exchange, with Conor asking if she would help him, but Lin remains cautious. Later, Kel sees Conor and Lin dancing, sensing an undercurrent of tension. Meanwhile, Maesh chastises Lin for her recklessness in attending the event and reveals his past relationship with the Exilarch, explaining the strained history between them. In Chapter 7, Lin wakes up early, troubled by the presence of the Exilarch in the city. She goes to the Black Mansion to retrieve her magical books, only to find the Ragpicker King and others in an uproar over a failed attempt to poison Artel Gremont at the previous night's party. Marin is particularly upset, as Gremont has a protective amulet preventing the poison from working. The group discusses stealing the amulet, but Andréan warns against it due to its dangerous power. He suggests focusing on the Shining Gallery investigation, which might tie Gremont to a massacre. Meanwhile, Kel, disguised as Conor, prepares for the arrival of Princess Angelica. At the docks, they move a dock to accommodate her massive elephant, and Angelica makes her dramatic entrance. Later, Lin encounters Legate Jolivet, who demands she come with him to the palace, where she reluctantly agrees, knowing her grandfather Maesh would not approve of her refusal. In Chapter 8, Lin is summoned to Maravent by Legate Jolivet, who takes her through the quiet palace away from the celebrations for Princess Angelica's arrival. Upon reaching Prince Conor's chambers, Lin finds him surrounded by servants while he is partially dressed, intentionally trying to unsettle her. Despite his casual demeanor, Conor reveals that his father, King Marcus Aurelian, is seriously ill, exhibiting a strange, almost catatonic state since the Shining Gallery massacre. The king has been unresponsive and physically deteriorating. Lin listens to the king's heartbeat and confirms his body is healthy, but his mind seems trapped. Conor shares that the king had a mysterious brew from a man named Faustin, which may hold the key to his condition. Lin is tasked with discovering whether the substance is medicine, poison, or something else. As she prepares to leave, the king suddenly speaks in a strange language, repeating a phrase that chills Lin, prompting her to flee. In Chapter 9, Angelica confronts Kel about the danger she's in, suspecting Laurent Aiden is still a threat. Kel reassures her that Castellane is well guarded and safe, but she insists on speaking to Prince Conor privately. As they reach the Castel Pichon, Angelica, unperturbed by the opulent palace, expresses her desire to speak candidly with Conor. The queen is taken aback by her request, but reluctantly allows it. Angelica reveals her past with Aiden, detailing how he betrayed her and continues to pursue her. She asserts the marriage is a political alliance and she doesn't want to pretend otherwise. Conor responds with honesty, agreeing to a public display of affection but maintaining discretion in their private lives. After a frank discussion, Conor leaves, amused by the situation and stating that he likes Angelica. Kel observes that Conor seems relieved despite the tension of the conversation. In Chapter 10, Lin assists Marin in testing the substance she brought back from Maravent, discovering it contains blackroot, a deadly poison. They discuss the implications of the poison's presence in a patient's medicine. Lin also reflects on Gremont's return to Castellane and his ongoing influence. Meanwhile, Conor and Kel spend time at the arena, where Conor expresses his frustrations about power and responsibility. Kel is reminded of the weight of royal obligations as they discuss Gremont's manipulative nature. Lin visits the arena, where she encounters the Exilarch, Aaron Benjuda, and reflects on their connection. She distracts Conor to allow Kel to question Magali Bertha, who is revealed to have been involved in the plot to assassinate Princess Louisa, although she insists her lady, Liarada Alain, was not behind the murder. Magali shares a cryptic encounter with a mysterious figure in black, directing Kel to Tindaris, where further answers may lie. In Chapter 11, Conor works late into the night, examining maps and making plans for his father's health, deciding to seek Lin's help with remaking Faustin's medicine. Kel expresses his support, but is tasked by Conor to attend a banquet in his place. Meanwhile, Angelica prepares for the event, wearing a stunning gown, and discusses her plans with Kel. She asks for his help in secretly arranging a meeting with someone who can help her deal with the pirate Aiden. Angelica reveals her concerns about trust among the nobility, and Kel agrees to consider her request. At the banquet, Kel impersonates Conor, interacting with the nobility, including Lady Gremont and Antonetta, who expresses surprise at Angelica's beauty and status. In the palace library, Lin meets Conor to research Blackroot and Faustin's notes, discovering they relate to magic and poison. Lin agrees to help with the king's condition, and Conor entrusts her with Faustin's secret notes. In Chapter 12, Kel and Conor ride through the Broken Market, heading to the Caravel. Conor has been struggling with his father's condition and the pressure of his royal responsibilities, including dreams that haunt him. At the Caravel, they meet Falconet and other guests, but Conor is distracted. Kel is concerned about Conor's mental state, especially after a troubling night. Kel then goes upstairs to find Antonetta in Scylla's room, who reveals she is desperate for Kel to be her first lover instead of her fiancé, Gremont. Kel is torn, ultimately rejecting her request but feeling conflicted. Meanwhile, Lin visits the Shulamat Gardens to find the Exilarch, Aaron Benjuda, surrounded by children asking about their future. Lin asks Aaron to translate a set of Raidenite notes from Faustin, but is reluctant to explain their origin. Aaron agrees, but only if Lin allows him to join her on her rounds as a condition. In Chapter 13, Kel prepares to accompany Angelica to a secret meeting. He meets Lilibet, who questions him about Conor and Angelica's behavior, revealing her frustrations with Angelica's stubbornness. Kel arrives at the West Gate, where Angelica and her guard Kurami are waiting. The carriage takes them through Castellane's narrow streets to a tea house where they meet the Ragpicker King, Andrean, and Gian. Angelica requests Andrean's help to send a message to the pirate Laurent Aiden, who has blackmailed her with compromising letters. In exchange, she offers information about Prosper Beck, who has resurfaced in Castellane, potentially preparing for a conflict. The meeting ends with Andrean agreeing to help, but warning Angelica of the risks involved. Meanwhile, Lin receives a mysterious message from Prince Conor, asking her to meet him in Valerian Square for the Hierophant's blessing. Her grandfather, Maesh, expresses concern about Conor's changing behavior and warns her about the potential dangers ahead. In Chapter 14, Kel, Marin, Jared, and Gian sail toward the island of Tindaris to investigate a weapons cache as directed by Angelica. Kel reflects on his strained relationship with the Ragpicker King, Andrean, who is displeased with Kel's recent actions. The group arrives at the island and climbs the moss-covered stairs to the Chapel of 1,000 Doors. They are confronted by Lady Elaine and Artel Gremont, who are in a tense meeting with a mysterious woman, Elsabet Belmani, the Crown Princess of Malgassi. Elsabet reveals her plans to take over Castellane, undermining the current royal family and pushing for power through her alliance with the Aurelians. Tensions escalate when Gremont is killed by a mysterious assassin, and the group narrowly escapes under heavy fire. Antonetta Allen arrives to rescue them, and they flee to safety, with Kel questioning his feelings for her as they share a brief, charged moment together. In Chapter 15, Kel, Gian, and Marin return to the Black Mansion, where Andrean tends to Marin's injuries. Andrean is upset with Kel for not warning him about Angelica and her involvement, but Kel deflects, focusing on the task at hand. They discuss the Malgassi conspiracy involving Elsabet Belmani and the Charter families, including the blackmail and manipulation behind the Shining Gallery massacre. Lin arrives and insists Kel inform Legate Jolivet of the threat, but Andrean warns of the potential dangers, including the risk to Antonetta. The conversation shifts to the next step, interrogating Cyprian Cabrol, as they have already lost one conspirator, Artel Gremont. Meanwhile, Lin reflects on her disturbing sense of magic from Elsabet, signaling the growing power struggle. At the Solstice Ball, Lin encounters Aaron Benjuda, who confronts Maesh about past lies and his handling of Ashkar affairs. Tensions rise as Lin, Mariam, and Aran exchange heated words, with Aaron walking away, leaving Lin unsettled. In Chapter 16, Lin confronts Aran about his recent confrontation with her grandfather, Maesh, and the damage he has caused to the Ashkar people. She expresses her loyalty to Maesh, revealing her understanding of his actions to protect the Ashkar people over any individual, including herself. Aran, still bitter, reveals his disillusionment with Maesh and his anger at being misled about Ashur-Benazir's exile. Lin and Aran's exchange grows tense, with Lin pressing Aaron on the motivations behind his actions. After their heated conversation, Lin heads to the palace, where she finds herself tending to Conor's father, the king. In his presence, Lin experiences a strange and intense connection to magic as the king speaks of his troubled past with the Malgazi. Meanwhile, Conor grapples with his obligations, the burdens of his royal duties, and his mounting unease. The chapter concludes with Lin and Conor sharing a moment of emotional tension. In Chapter 17, Lin grapples with her emotions and the invitation to the Solstice Ball, uncertain whether it is a personal or professional gesture from Conor. Marin, her friend and healer, continues to work on a remedy for Lin's patient, the king, while they discuss the use of sedatives in the formula. Lin decides to alter the remedy, ensuring its safety. At the ball, Lin feels out of place, but eventually finds Conor, who is troubled and asks her to trust him. They exchange masks, and Conor confesses that being apart from Lin makes him feel incomplete. This confession leads to a passionate kiss between them, which quickly escalates. However, as their intimacy deepens, Conor becomes anxious about being discovered, and Lin, overwhelmed by the emotional consequences, pushes him away. She leaves the folly, devastated by the realization of the pain she's exposed herself to. In Chapter 18, Kel, posing as Conor, is confronted by Cyprian Cabrol, who is anxious about Kel's knowledge of his connection to Elsabet Belmany. Kel cleverly presses for a private meeting, agreeing to meet Cyprian the next day. While dancing with Angelica, Kel learns from her that Laurent Aiden, a wanted criminal, will be attending the ball disguised as a diplomat. They discuss the risks involved in dealing with Laurent and Angelica's personal reasons for seeking closure with him. Meanwhile, Antonetta arrives at the ball, attracting attention and whispers. Kel, as Conor, approaches Antonetta, and they share a brief, tense conversation. Antonetta warns him about Kel's potential manipulation by the Ragpicker King. Kel grows frustrated, but maintains composure. Later, Conor, drenched and disturbed, reveals to Kel his desire for a different life, but the conversation is interrupted when Angelica arrives, prompting Conor to return to the ballroom and fulfill his royal duties. In Chapter 19, Lin, feeling regretful and overwhelmed by her actions with Conor, goes about her daily rounds with Aaron. They visit several patients, and Lin begins to appreciate Aaron's unexpected skill in medicine. During their rounds, they encounter Zofia, who flirts with Aaron, causing Lin to see a different side of him. Later, Aaron informs Lin that her claim to be the goddess may result in her exile if she fails the upcoming test. Lin is devastated by the implications and the political consequences tied to her grandfather's influence. Meanwhile, Kel, recovering from a hangover, prepares for a meeting with Cyprian Cabrol at the Caravel. Cyprian, terrified of the Malgacy, reveals that he only knows part of the conspiracy involving the Shining Gallery massacre. Kel pressures him for names, and after some persuasion, Cyprian agrees. He also warns that the Malgacy's hatred for the Aurelians is driven by a deep, pure fire. In Chapter 20, Lin receives a cryptic message from Conor, urging a private conversation. After preparing for her test, she struggles with memories of their night together and the consequences of their actions. Meanwhile, Conor, distracted and deeply troubled, plays a game with Kel, but his thoughts remain consumed by the events at the Solstice Ball. When Angelica confronts Conor about his public affair, he admits his mistake, though his apology lacks sincerity. Lin and Conor later have an intense conversation in which he offers her a life as his mistress, but Lin refuses, unwilling to sacrifice her independence for a life of secrecy. Conor, tormented, reveals his deep internal conflict about his duties as a prince. Kel, frustrated with his own emotional turmoil, practices with a sword in the hayloft, where Angelica finds him and offers a rare apology. The chapter ends with Kel contemplating his future relationships and his loyalty to Conor. In Chapter 21, Kel wakes up to find Conor and Joss Falconet discussing the discovery of Cyprian Cabrol's body in the canal. Conor is distracted and distant, and the conversation reveals that Cyprian's death may be linked to a larger conspiracy. Falconet speculates on the political implications of Cabrol's death and mentions Beatrice Cabrol possibly inheriting her family's charter. As they continue to investigate, another body is found, Gramont, whose death is linked to the same conspiracy. Kel realizes that the deaths are staged to look like a duel, but they are part of a broader scheme orchestrated by Elsabet Belmoney. Lin, having learned critical information about the Blood Royal, insists on visiting the king to confirm her findings. Kel supports her decision, and as they travel together, Lin confesses her complex feelings for Conor, which Kel has recognized. She admits she is afraid of loving him, and Kel resolves to stand by Conor despite the emotional turmoil. In Chapter 22, Lin enters the king's room to find him unchanged despite the reformulated medication. The king communicates with Lin through his mind, revealing his transformation after a traumatic event involving a phoenix at the Malghazi court. His hands, now blackened and cracked with fiery veins, symbolize his connection to the phoenix. He explains how the Malghazi court had tortured the creature for power, and how he released it, altering his own blood and mind. Lin learns the truth of her connection to the phoenix and how it is tied to the power of the goddess, a force that could destroy the Malghazi. The king urges Lin to embrace this power to protect Castellane. As Lin performs her trial, she is tasked with healing Mariam, who has suffered for years. Through her growing power, Lin successfully heals Mariam, but her hands burn with red fire, drawing the Maharam's horror. Lin's powers reach their peak as she is confronted by Elsabet Belmoney, recognizing her as a threat. In Chapter 23, Kel struggles with his guilt and the tension of revealing the truth to Conor. He receives a cryptic message from Andrean warning him about Angelica's planned escape and rushes to stop her. After sneaking into Angelica's room, he confronts her, discovering she plans to flee with Laurent Aiden, fearing assassination by the Malghazi. Angelica admits her love for Laurent and expresses concern for Conor's safety, but she remains resolute in her decision. When Kel returns to the room, he is confronted by Conor, Falconet, and other nobles who accuse him of treason, claiming he worked with the Ragpicker King and caused the deaths of Greymont and Cyprian. Kel insists on his innocence, but Falconet reveals Kel's missing clothes and amulet, suggesting betrayal. Kel tries to defend himself, but when Jolivet arrives, he denies involvement and accuses Kel of lying, leading to Kel being struck and losing consciousness. In Chapter 24, Kel wakes up in a prison cell, realizing he's been locked in the Trick, the notorious La Trecherie Tower. He recalls being accused of treason by Falconet, who framed him for the murders of Cyprien Cabrol and Artal Gremont. Meanwhile, Lin regains consciousness in the Black Mansion, disoriented and realizing she's been exiled after her trial. She discovers the Source Stone still has power despite her collapse. Maesh, her grandfather, reveals that he's been dismissed from his position as counselor for advising Conor to trust Kel, further complicating the situation. Lin decides to confront Conor, hoping to clear Kel's name, but finds him angry and distant. Conor, now mistrustful of everyone, accuses Lin of lying and betraying him, and orders her to stay away from the palace. Lin, devastated, prepares to leave, but insists on revealing a crucial truth about Conor's father, the king, and Conor himself before she goes. In Chapter 25, Lin returns to the Black Mansion after failing to convince Conor of the conspiracy and the danger they face from the Malghazi. Upon arriving, she finds Aaron Benjuda, the Exilarch, waiting for her and learns that he has come to acknowledge her as the goddess despite her exile. Aaron, acknowledging his past blindness, promises to be her guardian, urging her to undergo the ordeal of bitter water to unlock her full power. Lin struggles with her worthiness and fears the consequences of claiming such power, but ultimately agrees to undergo the ordeal, realizing the gravity of her choice. Meanwhile, Kel escapes from his cell, aided by a mysterious key, and flees the Trick Tower, swimming through dangerous waters. He is saved from the crocodiles by a medallion Conor gave him, which protects him from harm. Kel realizes that Conor's actions were meant to keep him alive. In Chapter 26, Kel regains consciousness after being thrown from the cliffs and escapes the Trick. He heads to the Key, where he seeks out Prosper Beck, now revealed to be Antonetta Aline. After a tense confrontation, Kel confronts Antonetta about her lies, including her manipulations, and they both acknowledge the secrets they've hidden from each other. Antonetta reveals she became Prosper Beck to gain power and self-preservation, and Kel admits his dual identity as the Sword Catcher. They finally face the truth about each other's identities. Despite their strained relationship, Kel asks Antonetta to join his plan to fight the Malghazi, acknowledging their shared goal. Antonetta agrees to help, but with conditions, offering her support as both Beck and Antonetta. They agree to work together, but Kel is left uncertain about his feelings for her. The chapter ends with a sense of uneasy collaboration, with both characters aware of the stakes ahead. Epilogue. Conor reflects on the changes in his life, especially his separation from Kel and Lin. He believes that Lin is safe, far from him, and remembers the tale she told him about the king's transformation and the phoenix. Conor reaches his father's chamber and finds King Marcus in a much improved state, his eyes clear, skin healthy, and anger gone, replaced with anticipation. Conor informs his father that Lin has revealed everything about the phoenix, Malghazi, and the king's condition. He admits that he has sent Lin and Kel away to make it seem as though he's alone and vulnerable. Conor believes this will make their enemies overconfident, allowing them to strike when they think he is weakest. He assures his father that they are not alone and can defeat their enemies together. The king responds by gently touching Conor's hair, affirming their unity with a simple "together"